Welcome back to a special episode of the Purple Rain podcast with Huddled Up Films.
Yeah. Why is it not showing me?
Once again, thank you for coming through to episode 164, the Tyler Linderbaum episode, the Edwin Mulatalo, John Urschel episode. I actually met Edwin Mulatalo before. Me and Pops did way back when. Super nice guy. Coming off the injury, I believe, of the Purple Rain podcast. So thank you for coming through. We have a lot to talk about. But first and foremost, we have a nice guest right below me, Huddled Up Films, aka Jason. Let them know where they can find you on, Twitter, YouTube.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm right here on YouTube, Huddle It Up Films. Check it out. And also on Twitter, Huddle It Up Films. Big thing is my big board. I'm a draft nerd. Been doing it since the Dwayne Stark 1998 drafts. We passed on Randy Moss. Drafted Dwayne Starks. Luckily won a Super Bowl shortly after. So have a big board. It's very extensive. I study about 250 players every year. So this is my exciting time of year.
Absolutely. And we're really glad to have you on, man. Obviously, me and Alex, I'm not gonna lie, we've been kind of ducking the draft talk as of late here, but now we're like 2 weeks out from the draft. So we got to talk about it. We had to bring you on. All your expertise, it does not go unnoticed, man. I see you a lot on Twitter, and then on YouTube as well. But like on Twitter, I see your presence is definitely very heavy, and I appreciate that because I get a lot of good news from you. So
100%.
Make sure you guys go ahead and subscribe and follow our guy Huddled Up Films. You can follow us on Instagram at the Purple Rain Podcast, like you see down below. Follow this guy over here on Twitter at SimplyAs10, Instagram at SimplyAs10.prod, and then myself, you can find me on Twitter or Instagram at Sutton Def. Last but certainly not least, our sponsor, Manscaped. You guys already know, the nationwide leader in male personal hygiene below the belt. Manscaped.com. They got a bunch of fun new products out right now that are actually very, very useful. You guys see how me and Alex are looking. We're pretty clean cut, especially my guy Alex over there. But you can go on Manscaped.com. You can use our code PRP to save 20% off your Manscaped order. Plus, you get free shipping as well. Who can beat that?
You really can't. You honestly can't beat it. So yeah. Go use PRP, 20% and free shipping. It's a deal and a half.
Right. All right, guys, so we're not going to mince words here. We are going to hit our marks tonight on this episode of the Purple Rain Podcast, episode 164, man. It's getting crazy. It's getting crazy. We're going to go ahead and get right into it. So the first thing we came here to talk about tonight on this here episode is Odell Beckham Jr. is officially a Raven. Signing that contract today, all the media that, was posted, everything looks great. It's a happy city. Charm City is a happy city right now. Is it not? How are you guys feeling about that?
Jason?
I love it. I think the reason I love it is I think the Ravens, I strongly feel like this, they figured out that with Lamar, they want him here, but it's a year-to-year thing at this point. I mean, Lamar holds a lot of the cards. So what they're doing here with the void years, and we've seen it with the other contracts, is they're basically saying, we're doing our little mini version of the Rams here and going all in for this year, and you see other veteran players with a want to come here now, like Odell Beckham is a force multiplier. So you're going to have to throw the ball more. You're going to have to get him involved and encourages Lamar to come to training camp to start the year on time. Just everything about it. I love it. I believe in Odell, the player. I just wanted to say real quick, alpha skills linger longer. So what Odell was able to do great at 23, 25, he's still going to be able to do effectively, even coming off of 2 knee surgeries. If he doesn't have the same speed and quickness, he's still going to be able to run the whole route tree. He's still going to be able to make catches way out of his radius. So I love that it takes pressure off of Bateman. I just like the whole move and the whole vibe, some attitude on offense.
Yeah, I'm glad you said attitude because, it's just a bit of swagger we haven't had in so long. And it's just like the small things, like those end zone dances, I'm already thinking of in my head. I'm already thinking of him hitting. I saw, the bird flu. I saw the Park Heights strut as well. Maybe he pulls that out. If he knows all about those dances, that would be something. And hearing him talk in the presser today was really encouraging. How the media paints him as a me. He said nothing but we. Honestly, I'm not French, So that's what I heard. Sutton, what about you?
Oh, man, you guys both just made some really valid points. As you guys know, per 163, of the Purple Rain podcast. I wasn't too excited about the Odell move, but I've kind of been warming up to it. I'm not gonna lie. I think my guy Jason just said something very, very interesting, and I want him to kind of elaborate on it. He said that alpha skills. What did you say about alpha skills?
Linger longer. Yeah,
They
that's
linger longer.
Yeah, old
Okay.
scouting team.
And what do you mean by like alpha skills? Can you break that down for us?
Yeah, when a player is really good at something among NFL players, not just like he was good at it in college, but I'm talking about Odell Beckham, the way he leverages routes. It's not just about quickness with him. The way he sets up opponents, and the way he finishes, obviously with his hands, like for whatever size he is, 6 foot or whatever it is, he plays much taller, much bigger. His hands are spectacular. So just like when we brought Des Bryant in, he can still body people and box people out because that's his alpha skill. Odell Beckham, just like Deshaun Jackson, is still fast at age 36 or whatever. Odell is going to have those kind of skills that they're just linger longer than a normal person. Like Adrian Peterson's another good example. Those kind of superstars, like they can hold on to those superstar qualities longer than a good player.
Right. No, that makes a lot of sense. Basically, what you're saying is that like he's got a trump card, essentially, and like he can use that. He can take that later into his career, and I like that a lot. I think that makes a whole lot of sense. Okay, so kind of talking about kind of expanding on Odell a little bit more. You also mentioned the fact that having Odell frees up a Rashad Bateman. It also frees up a Mark Andrews. That's one thing that, one reason why I've been kind of warming up to the Odell move, because we know how good of a route runner Odell can be, especially when healthy, and you can line him up. We've seen Odell play the X. We've seen him play the Y before. I mean, I just don't know what he really can't do. He's pretty versatile of a receiver. And if you ask me, Rashad Bateman, and if stop me if you disagree here, I think that Rashad Bateman and Odell Beckham Jr. have a lot of similarities in their game. So this kind of leads into what we actually came here to talk about tonight, the draft. A lot of Ravens fans are still clamoring for a receiver to be drafted by the Ravens. So my question to you, Jason, is what receivers in the draft do you think will be the perfect piece to this puzzle that we've already put together with Odell Beckham, Rashad Bateman, Andrews, and the rest of those guys?
I'm curious to see Sutton if they prioritize. There's two things I'm looking at: either speed or yards after the catch. Okay. So I think like you hit it perfectly. Like with Odell and Bateman, they can both run routes. Hey, what's up, Hendo? They can both run routes. They can both get open underneath. Especially you add Andrews to that, and likely we should have the underneath stuff covered. So do you want a guy who can make a few guys miss and house it? Or do you want that speed guy like a Torrey Smith to take the top off? And there are a few guys in this draft that I think could do either one or the other once you get past, because there's really not a complete wide receiver number one Jamar Chase type guy in this draft. And if he wasn't making it to 22 anyway. So it depends on kind of what you want. Like I like a guy like Jalen Hyatt a lot for this offense. He's probably a second round pick. I wouldn't even be upset if we drafted him at 22, because he's a legitimate 4'4" guy at 6'1", 176, long arms, good hands. Like, I like Jalen Hyatt. Imagine him taking the top off of the whole thing. And if you don't account for him, he's the kind of guy where it turns into 6. Also like Zay Flowers a lot, who's a first round guy because of his yak. He can make guys miss. He's if you were going to take somebody into a street fight, he would be the toughest guy in the draft. He'd be the guy that you would want. He plays with constant attitude, everything he does with urgency. So I think you have guys in the first round, and then simply, you've seen my draft list. I have basically 12 guys that I think could add to this team right away and be a piece in the future. And if I'm doing the math, if we pick at 86 and I got 12 guys, receivers that I like, chances are one of those 12 is going to be there, unless all 12 of the guys that I like are going to go in order. So, it's a numbers game for the Ravens. I think Odell frees us up to not pigeonhole us into having to draft a receiver in the first round.
I like what you say there. Now, one guy I've been high on is JSN. If he's there at 22, what are we thinking? I mean, do we take him? Okay. Because I've seen that I heard that multiple, guys in the front office think that he's the only first round receiver with that talent. You probably may disagree, but if he's there at 22, I'm from the school of thought, take him. this receiving core needs as much help as it can get. And even if Lamar is not here, it doesn't hurt to have these guys for the next guy. Just that's a sad way you got to think now. I wish it was never like that, but that's where I'm at.
I mean, this guy's a pro, Sutton. If you watch him, it doesn't take long. I would encourage somebody or anybody out there to see if they can watch his field drills at the combine, because it was just like, I mean, he's a savant at running the routes. Other guys were concerned about making it and where to turn on the cones and all this. And Smith-Njigba's giving fake moves and head fakes and all this, running around the cones. Like, it was so easy for him. And then his agility drills were off the chart. Like, he ran a sub 4-second shuttle drill, which is just ridiculous. Most guys are in the 4s, 4.3s, 4.4s. His was 3.93. So you talked about on the shuttle, just the quickness, the change of direction. I have him all the way up at number 9 on my board. Like, I'm in love with Jackson Smith-Njigba. And also, he was gutting through an injury, only played 3 games this year. You go back to 2021, you want to see what somebody can do. It's ridiculous body control, size, everything you want. He's just not a burner. He'd be more in the Odell Bateman mode. But with a player that good, I wouldn't care.
Yeah, and of the board you're talking about, I just put it in the chat. I have it in my favorites. You might want to put it in your favorites. I look at it, when I'm making my videos. This guy knows what he's talking about. Another receiver, we're talking about as well. I saw you made a video on him, was Tank Dell. I've seen talking about burners. I mean, that's a burner guy. How do you feel about him? Let's say first round, we get a defensive back, then we're on a third round, and he's there.
Yeah, Tank Dell is a guy that I'm higher on than consensus. So I realize on my board he's going to be higher. I've seen him go 3rd, 4th round, and I don't believe it. Sutton, we were talking about them alpha skills that linger longer. Tank Dell's got the best feet in the draft. Like, probably the last 2 drafts, I put him up there with Garrett Wilson when you're talking about that kind of quickness. The problem with Tank Dell is he is 5'8", 165. So an inch shorter than Hollywood, shorter arms than Hollywood when I looked it up. And he runs a 4.49. So that blazing that Simply's talking about isn't long speed. It's within quick areas. He's impossible. He's absolutely impossible. I would say YouTube Tank Dell Senior Bowl, and you'll see what I mean with the footwork, the releases. I mean, this guy, he scored, I think, 29 or 30 touchdowns the last 2 years at 5'8".
So the only thing that may concern me about a guy of that size is his size. And, we're used to seeing Hollywood and what he did in his tenure with the Ravens and going down easy and not really, he had some yards after the catch, but not really in the way that you would prefer it. You know what I mean? Like, he'll catch the ball, turn around, run back 4 yards, and then try to see what he can make out of it. Is this guy kind of the same, or is he like running through guys?
I would say I don't want to use the word tougher, but he's a little more determined than Hollywood was at times. He, like, you say like Lamar, where he'll, instead of flopping, he'll dive through guys, kind of. Like, he's not really trying to take on the crowd, but he's not exactly giving himself up or looking to go out of bounds. But the main problem I have with Tank Dell Sutton is, if you're talking about 5'8" and you run a 4.49, think about completing the ball 30, 40 yards downfield. By the time that ball travels down there, you're going to have a long, tall, fast corner that's going to be able to make a play on that ball. So with Tank Dell, I don't expect him to be a deep threat like Hollywood. He is more of an underneath guy who, if it's like 3rd and goal from the 5, you might as well put 6 on the board, because even if you blitz, you can't stick with somebody that quick in that short area. So he would be like plus he returns kicks. So that should tell you a little bit about his toughness.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, you mentioned early on Jalen Hyatt. That's my guy in the draft. If we can get him in the first round, I'd be happy. Like you said, like, you wouldn't be mad at him, us picking him at 22. I would actually love that. I mean, I love the height on him. You said 6 foot, 6'1", 4.4 speed. I was watching some of his tape earlier. I feel like that's the perfect piece to the puzzle that we have currently. Now, another thing, you also said that Odell Beckham Jr. kind of frees up the Ravens from feeling kind of forced to draft a wide receiver, especially early on. One could also argue, and let me know how you guys feel about this, Todd Monken, Ravens' new offensive coordinator at Georgia, ran a lot of 2 tight end sets, actually the majority of the time, supposedly. So do you think that would also impact the Ravens' decision and what they're going to do at 22? So now we can kind of open it up and talk about which direction do we think the Ravens are going to go in? Because there's kind of 2 schools of thought here, either receiver or DB. Which one do you guys think that the Ravens will go with, and which one would you prefer at 22?
Simply?
I'll go first. receiver, I would prefer. I think they're going to go DB. I think last year when we had Kyle Hamilton fall to us, and I'll preach it again. They gave McDonald anything he wanted to help him make his first year as that coordinator easy. Do the same thing for Monken. Do the same exact thing. And now I don't want to reach at it for a receiver. If they aren't there, they aren't there. But if there is a guy that we think can help on day one, which a first rounder should be able to do, then I would take him, a receiver. It would just help us out even that more. I mean, there's question marks after we saw when Bateman and Duve went down. It was pedestrian. So you don't want to go through that again. Jason?
And, Sutton, I would say that I think that there's a commitment for Lamar to spread this offense out a little bit more and allow him to throw the ball, allow him to showcase himself. I think even more than money in this whole thing is respect. I think that Lamar, if you look at some of the deals he's turned down and the Florida people that he's worked with, my buddy Skeptico brought this up, and it's a great point. Lamar's about loyalty, principle, that kind of thing. So whatever he's looking for in the contract, I feel like the Ravens would be willing to give it to him if it wasn't so, the other owners are their business partners, their peers. So they don't want to be the ones. That's why they say, hey, go ahead and sign them. We'll match. Other teams know we're going to match. So why I'm saying all this is I believe that at Georgia, Monken had 2 tight ends, one in this draft and one's going to be, I think, next draft or the year after. His 2 best players were tight ends. Like none of their receivers are getting drafted this year. So you saw back at the Tampa Bay days, he was bombs away, that kind of thing. So I think that we still need another receiver. Aguilar only here maybe for 1 year. Odell, who knows? Duvernay's a free agent. Prochet at this point, who knows what his status is. So I think somebody will be drafted at some point in this draft. But like me personally, this is just my take. Once you get past Jackson Smith-Njigba and Zay Flowers, I don't see a whole lot of difference between like Jordan Addison, Quentin Johnston, Hyatt's kind of different because he's got that special skill between them. And then you're like your Jonathan Mingos and your Cedric Tillmans and Denzel Mims and guys who could be there at 86, or maybe we trade back and are able to get both. So first round, I just feel like one of those top 5 corners is just going to be sitting right there. A cornerback number 1 that you compare with Marlowe, have 2 cornerback number 1s. I feel like that's going to end up being the best value if I had to guess on draft day, because those receivers get snatched up, Sutton. We saw it last year.
Yeah. And
speaking about corners, your positional favorite is somebody who I fell in love with about a week ago, and that's Emmanuel Forbes. I mean, talk about ball hawk. I think he set the record for the most pick sixes, I believe. I think the Jim Thorpe Award winner as well.
6 of them.
That's insane. For Mississippi State, I mean, I was glad he's your favorite because he was definitely my favorite watching him play. Just absolute ball hawk, and I think we could use a little bit more interceptions in that defensive back because we know Marlon loves the fumbles. Not the biggest guy to get the interceptions, but have somebody like Marcus Peters was that ball hawk.
Right. That's my favorite guy for that reason. You put him at left cornerback. You let him do what Marcus Peters does here. And who knows, with this, I want to say, with this all-in mentality, don't think that players don't notice. Don't think a guy like Marcus Peters or some of these veteran guys around the league like Darius Slay kind of let out today. Don't think they don't want to come here, play on a deal and go for it. Some of these like guys who are already established and made their money. You want to play with Odell. You want to play with Lamar. But my positional favorite, Emmanuel Forbes, 6 foot. Here we go, Sutton. $166, bro. At 6 foot tall.
Okay.
So
wow.
This is why he's like people sleep on him. They see that, and you know what they say, Sutton. Ain't no way, bro. Ain't no way he's going to tackle Najee Harris. But then Simply will tell you, when you watch him, he is aggressive as you know what. And he knows his limitations. See, he will pounce on you. He will set the edge with these long arms, 32.25-inch arms, which is like offensive lineman size. Set the edge and you can pounce on you. Take out your legs, all this. But it simply said, college record, 6 pick sixes, a ton of interceptions. I forget how many, but 6 of them were returned for touchdowns. 4.35 guy, Sutton, at 6 foot tall. Ball hawk, great eyes. I love him. I think the size thing or the weight thing is going to be overblown, just like Devontae Smith was a few years ago at receiver.
What school does he go to? Or did he go
Mississippi State. Yep, Mississippi State. So SEC guy too. He's not playing against junior league, bro. He's 6 pick sixes in the SEC. So you can watch him against some of these big schools.
Yeah, I was actually getting ready to ask you. I mean, when you're evaluating DB talent, do you sometimes feel like you have to be careful because when you're a DB in college, you're playing against a lot of maybe lower end schools, which leads to lower end quarterbacks who are maybe be handing you these pick sixes or these picks on a silver platter. So you kind of got to be careful, right? Or what? How do you evaluate?
Definitely. I mean, some of these quarterbacks, you know how hard it is even for the high draft picks to pan out. I mean, some of these quarterbacks just don't have the arm strength and they don't read. But I like to try to match up. Like Julius Brents is going to be drafted a corner. He went up against Quentin Johnston. So that I had matchups there where I could see, all right, this is an NFL receiver versus NFL DB. Let's kind of judge them by that. So like when I watch, I try to watch their highest competition games. And some of it's not perfect. You know what I mean? I mean, you see how many busts there are every year. So it's not perfect, but you just kind of got to put the pieces together, excuse me. And that's part of the reason I like Forbes is I see his toughness when he's trying to tackle these big backs, and he'll get up and talk to you too, man. Like he brings a true attitude to the game.
Interesting. Good talk so far. Good discussion going on here. Make sure you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel as well if you are new. And we've got our guy Jason from Huddle It Up Film, so make sure you go and subscribe to him on YouTube as well. Great content coming out on his end. So Lisa says, question for Jason. With Calais Campbell gone, who do we go with to take his spot? Now, this is an interesting question because before we went on, Alex, what were you asking him?
I was saying, I think, low-key we talk about receivers and DBs, but a thin position for us right now is D tackle. And Jason let me know. Oh, thank you for that 199 from Chike saying, will the D do well without Calais? Asking you that. So real quick, Jason let me know that after this year, our only under contract defensive lineman is Travis Jones.
Yeah. And, just think about this time next year. You don't want to try to fill 4 spots on your defensive line all at once. I mean, number one, you can't pay for 4 guys. You can't draft 4 guys. I mean, usually it takes defensive linemen a year or so to get like used to the speed and more to the strength of the game. So for me, it's not even just about replacing Calais. It's about finding somebody that can break into the league, get into the rotation this year, and be a force as early as next year. So there are a number of guys. I actually think it's a decent draft for defensive tackles. But if you're going to get one, defensive tackles, it's got a lot like cornerback, where if you're going to get a good one, it's probably going to have to be early on. So that therein lies the conundrum. Like if cornerbacks have to be fast, they have to be this, they have to have the physical skills, same as defensive linemen. It's hard to find a defensive lineman that can provide you pass rush in the first place. So if you want to try to go for one, you better get them early.
I mean, who were some guys you're looking at? I know I was looking at from Michigan. He really wasn't helping out in the pass game. I forget his name. I was doing it this morning. And I saw a couple of edge guys, but no really D tackles stood out to me. Have any stood out to you?
Yeah, there's a couple. Well, I think the first person we should talk about is who I think is the best player in the draft, and that's Jalen Carter. Not to get into his business off the field, but let's just say it's been about as bad of a draft season as you can get for him. He was involved in an accident. Lives were lost. He was speeding, racing, had to actually leave the combine to go to court and all this other stuff. And then on his pro day, he shows up and reporters are saying he couldn't finish drills. He was out of shape, this, that, and the other. When you figure like this would be his big redeeming moment to show everybody, then he kind of flunks out on that too. So I'm wondering if the best player in the draft, the best player on that Georgia defense, which has just been dominant the next 2 years, could have a fall like Jeffrey Simmons did a few years ago. And that would be a really tough decision where like I'm 50-50. If he's there, I don't know if the Ravens would take him. I would think no, if I'm going by the John Harbaugh Ravens that I know, but he's definitely, I think, the best player, non-quarterback in the draft.
That is interesting because, I mean, I know I saw like teams were taking him off of their boards. I know they said the Raiders were, and the Raiders going to meet with him, which that's typical Las Vegas Raiders at that point, just contradicting themselves. I mean, I don't think he would fall to 22 at all. And like you said, I don't think we would even take our chances on him because any drama or anything off the field, we don't even like to stick it with a 10-foot pole, So that is.
So another guy, I'm gonna put my flag in here, and this is like the end of this first round is going to be unpredictable. This guy could go in the 3rd round, but his name is Atamia Adebawore. And Mr. Adebawore,
Yes.
bro, he reminds me of Matabike in so many ways. Just a better prospect, at this time of the year. He's like Sutton. He's like an inch shorter, 10 pounds lighter than Matabike. So like the physical skills add up. They had this man playing rush end, which is like where Adafio Way is over the left tackle, hand in the dirt. And they would move him inside, and they listed his weight at 260. And I'm thinking, man, this guy, man, he looks good at defensive tackle, but 260, that's not going to cut it, man. Like, especially for the Ravens, you got to be able to defend the run. They're not going to put somebody 260 inside. He comes to the combine, he weighs 280 something and runs a 4.49, I think 40.
Jesus.
Unreal.
You watch him throw people around in the run game, and of course he'll give you that versatility. Like he reminds me of Matabike, but you know how he was moving Calais around up and down the line, edge sometimes, 4-tech, 3-tech. Like this guy, I think he's one of my favorites. He's my positional favorite at defensive line, and he could be had in the first round, I would think for sure. I really like him. There's also Brian Brzee out of Clemson, the Maryland kid out of DeMatha. He's a monster. And then a lot of people like Kalijah Cansey, another guy to keep an eye on. Me personally, I think he plays too light to be a Raven. I think he's a one gapper, which means there's your gap, you shoot that and go because his quickness is off the charts. I think a 4-3 team, even front team will like Cansey more than we would. We like our defensive linemen a little bit bigger and able to two gap and take care of a lot of space. But right there at the top of the draft, and I mean, even if we're able to trade back, one of those guys will probably be available. And I saw somebody brought up, Mazi Smith, more of a nose tackle simply. That's he's not affecting the quarterback, just a giant.
How to pick though. I always love seeing the big guys get picks. That's always cool. And I know we're not really needing an edge, but watching Anudike Uzomah, I believe.
Yes.
He seems like a fun guy to root for. Maybe it was the sack celebration, but he just was out there having a blast, just getting after the quarterback, wrecking havoc. And then another guy who I liked, Ravens won't get him, I think JL Skinner from Boise State. Talk about laying the wood. He absolutely, I think it was the Oregon State game. He left nightmares for their whole offense. Those are just guys I like. I don't think the Ravens will take them because, we're good on edge. Maybe we get Justin Houston back, who knows? And then safety, I think we're good with that. We could maybe dip our toes in the late rounds.
Yeah, excuse me, Edge and Adike Uzomah. He does the stalk dance. That's what I was doing. He reminds me a little bit of I don't know if you've seen this simply, but Yannick Ngakoue with his little jump step, his little Euro step to the inside, little cross chop, hand swipe. Like he's explosive. Yeah, I mean, he's explosive. He's got some moves. There's also like some bigger edges, guys that you could like scoot inside for passing downs. Like Lucas Van Ness. I think he'll probably be gone before we pick him. Miles Murphy out of Clemson. It's a pretty good edge class. So, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if we're able to get somebody under the radar like round 3 or round 4 in the edge, which, it's not a huge need. But then again, you're relying on Adafio Way and of course, David Ajabo, who we really haven't seen like major sack production out of either one. So it's kind of a tough call there. And Mike McDonald, Sutton, I don't know if you agree with this, but Mike McDonald seems to rely much more on his front four than we're used to here in Baltimore. Just sending for maybe an occasional blitz and, playing that zone defense instead of that tough wink man-to-man and just relying on his front four to get home. So I guess you can't have enough big guys up front.
Right. No, I mean, I agree with that. We wanted to cut down on the kind of boom or bust feel of our defense. Like either we are really good because we're all over the place and the defense is swarming with the blitzes and things like that, or we're just getting burned completely over the top. So I think we had to find that balance, and I think we did last season, minus that Dolphins game. But when there's a question for Jason here from Jonathan Washington Jr. says, Jason, what are your overall impressions of Quentin Johnson from TCU?
Half the time I love him, half the time I wouldn't draft him. It's really night and day. I mean, he's 6'3", and his body type is like the opposite of what his skill set is. So a lot of people have him number 1, wide receiver 1 or 2 on their board. A lot of people have him like wide receiver 5 or 6. And he's basically both within the same games. It's 6'3", 200 pounds. You don't expect him to be quick and be able to make guys miss underneath. He does that. At 6'3", 200 pounds, you expect him to be able to moss some people downfield and be a beast when the ball is in the air. And he doesn't. Like, if there's a ball in the air, the DBs will have their hands up, jumping up and get it. And he'll jump, but he's trying to cradle it. Takes away all his speed. And the drop rate is a problem. The drop rate is definitely a problem. So you got yourself a big receiver who's best used underneath. And it's kind of terrifying to me. Like, he's one of the few, Jonathan, like prototypical X receivers in this draft. Like, you look at him and you're like, yes, this is the guy we could stick out there on the island. They're going to have to pay mad attention to him. But it's hot and cold. Some people love him. Some people don't. Like, I would rather take a safer receiver in the first round and not have and this is the thing, Sutton, this will tell you everything you need to know. He gives me like some Miles Boykin type vibes when I watch him. You've gone, like, I've studied the draft, the pro days, all this since the 90s. I've gone to plenty of tryouts. I've seen plenty of tryouts from my own to like my kids and all that. And when you watch Quentin Johnston out there with the others, he's got that kind of like deer in the headlights type look. And it shows up on the field too. Like, his pro day, he dropped 2 or 3 balls, just like putting immense pressure on himself. So that kind of stuff kind of scares me. Like, I'd rather have a football player who's not quite the athlete, but confident in what he does than to spend a first round pick on a wild card. But that's my preference. Like, Jonathan, if you love him, I understand why, because he looks like the best receiver in this draft half the time.
And then Casey says he just saw that the Ravens like Addison and Johnston. I think I got that update too from Bleacher Report. Oh, I mean, I know we've been linked with Addison. I think local boy from Frederick, Maryland. I mean, I wouldn't hate it. First round, I probably wouldn't be the biggest fan of it. But who knows? I mean, we don't have our second round pick that turned into Roquan Smith. Now, somebody who I fell in love with, I actually fell in love with his brother a couple of years ago. That's one BJ Ojulari from LSU. Once again, another edge. I probably shouldn't be watching so many edge guys. I just like seeing sacks. So, how do you feel about BJ Ojulari?
He looks like a Ravens defender to me. And what I like about him is I think that you could put him in Bowser's spot and he'd be fine too. So he's not one of these guys that's just a hand in the dirt pass rusher and can't do anything else. Like, you can bring a little bit of mystery. You can have him drop into coverage. He's just a really smooth athlete. Looking at BJ Ojulari, you're looking at a guy with 34.25-inch arms. He has sacks and pressures up the middle. You can scoot him over that A gap. He harasses it. He's just too quick. Even though he's a 4.84, he's a quick guy. I really like him, 6'2", 248, so he kind of fits that like Tyus Bowser type body mold. I don't think simply that he'll get like a ton of sacks in the NFL. I see him more like a 5 to 8 sack guy, but really good against the run and really good to drop into coverage. He'd be more like a second, third round type guy for me, but it would fit. I mean, that would allow you to put Adafio away on one side for once and just let him rush the passer like he was brought here to do. I mean, you remember last year we had him at Sam early in the season, and I don't think that helped his development at all. Something like, being Adafio Wade didn't come here to cover tight ends. You know what I mean? Yeah, Ojulari, I think second round. I think all day second rounder.
Okay. And then we also have a question from Lisa Franco. Jason, do you have a sexy pick in the draft?
Oh, I do. This is my guy that nobody's talking about that I believe in the most. It's a wide receiver, so we'll like it. His name is Tyler Scott out of Cincinnati. You guys know anything about him?
Heard the name.
I actually heard the name. I heard the name this morning, actually.
So he's a junior Olympic sprinter. He ran a 4.44, but I don't think that's even indicative of how fast he is. He reminds me a lot of Hollywood Brown, and I think he could do a lot of what Hollywood Brown did on this team. Cincinnati, as you guys know, came into prominence, and Sauce Gardner, they started playing in big games. And Tyler Scott was a big part of that offense. He played with Desmond Ridder, so he had some pro quarterback experience. And those dig routes, those deep dig routes, is basically deep in routes, deep routes. Any route in the route tree he can run. And I hear a lot about Jonathan Mingo, who I love, Cedric Tillman. We mentioned Tank Dell, A.T. Perry, Denzel Mims, Rashee Rice, all these guys. And Tyler Scott gets lost in that mix. So, Lisa, I think wherever Tyler Scott goes, he's going to find a role, and he's going to impact right away. Love his hands, love his route running, love his speed, Like if I had any kind of like guts, I would move him even higher on my list. So I think he's going to be in that mix of like all those guys I mentioned can go in round 2 or round 3. That's why I think like pick 86 Sutton. One of these guys is going to have to be left from a mathematical perspective. Like somebody's going to get overlooked.
Yeah. What would you say are Tyler Scott's weaknesses?
Just playing at Cincinnati doesn't do him any favors, and I think he gets hid there. I think if he was at Alabama and did all the things he did in college, that would be a thing. He's also not huge. Let's see, he's not small either. I want to say he's like 5'10", 5'11".
Okay.
So he's not like the biggest guy, but I really like his 5'10", 177. So he's not the biggest guy, but like I said, he reminds me a lot of Hollywood in the way he comes out of his breaks. He'd get on you fast, come out of the breaks like a bandit, and be able to finish smooth. And he's a tough guy too. Just a smooth athlete with urgency.
And then Jonathan actually, he says that's what his thoughts were on Quentin Johnston. He thinks he has all the potential to be an X, but he does not know if the Ravens will, with their history of developing receivers, should they take a guy with so much boom or bust in him.
Right, yeah, especially when a number one corner is probably going to sit there. There's 5 to me number one corners in this draft. Like, are you really going to take like a sure thing like Joey Porter Jr. or Emmanuel Forbes we talked about with the 6 pick sixes? Are you going to pass on him for a Quentin Johnston when you can have maybe a Mingo or a Marvin Mims or a Tank Dell or somebody in the 3rd round? Like, I have a feeling like simply if you pick the wide receiver in the 1st and a corner in the 3rd, and I picked the corner in the 1st and the wide receiver in the 3rd, my guys are going to be better overall. That's just kind of how I see the draft landing.
Okay. Now, let me ask you this. You just mentioned Marvin Mims. That is a name that I've kind of been hearing a little bit, and I was kind of drew some interest to him. You know, kind of a speedster guy, right? What do you think about him?
Yeah, and he's not small either, 5'11". So you're talking about a guy that's 5'11" and ran a 4.38 easy speed, Sutton. I mean, you see it. You don't have to be a scout. You watch football games, you can see this guy just blow by people at Oklahoma. The knock on him is he wasn't asked to do a lot at Oklahoma. It was just basically like Jalen Hyatt, just run by people, and you're fast enough. And they're not the athlete that you are. But his like 3-cone drills and the way I watched him in the field drills at the combine, I think he's got more to offer. Like, I think he can run routes. I think he can threaten with his speed and break it off and run a curl or a hook or a 5-yard out or whatever it is. I believe he's also another guy with kick return ability. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to like about Marvin Mims. I think he sets up the deep ball well. Sutton is one of my notes that I have in the bold. Mixes speeds plus field awareness, limited variety in route running, but shows stop-start potential. Hits top speed quickly. Sutton, the only negative I had on him is he will get bullied from time to time. So if you got a guy at the line of scrimmage, they can knock Marvin Mims off the track. Or if somebody's able to stick with him, give him a little elbow down the field, he can get bumped a little bit. But a lot of upside to Marvin Mims.
Nice. Okay.
And the one question I have is that there's this college down the road that we really don't touch that much. All right. And we should, we see their games. They moved conferences, Big Ten now. Maryland, they got a couple of guys coming out there. Is this the year? The last guy we got was Torrey Smith. Is this the year that we call up UMD and take one of their players? They have cornerbacks. I see the end of their Raheem Jarrett as well, late rounder. But they do have 2 DBs that, I mean, they could help us. So do we think this is a year where we're just going to let the talent go away again?
No, I think if Deonte Banks is there at 22, I think they turn in the card. That is a Baltimore Ravens corner if I've ever seen one. Fast, physical. He's a different player, but the results reminds me of what you get out of Marlin at the NFL level. Like Jonathan's saying, Deonte Banks is an absolute dog. He is in your hip pocket. Does he turn his head and find the ball and get a bunch of interceptions? No. But if you're talking about step for step, can go with any receiver, physical or fast, Deonte Banks is that guy. He just looks like a Raven to me. I expect him to actually go before 22 with his physical skills and whatever he ran and all that other stuff. It all looked great. Raheem Jarrett, though, simply that's a guy I could see like come round 4. Yeah, I think it's a possibility because what Jarrett gives you is like he's a Devin Duvernay type, and we know Devin Duvernay's in his last year. He was used like a gadget guy. And one of the first things I said is I think that he's faster than people credit him. And he did. He ran a 4.45 at the combine. So another guy that wasn't asked to do a lot. They kind of used him in the screen game and all this gadgety stuff. But to me, Jarrett has the upside at 6 foot tall, too. So he's not some small gadget guy to where he could blossom into an NFL receiver. It just might take him like till year 2 to where he's like really comfortable in a starting receiver role.
I mean, he wouldn't have to start here, for the first year. So who knows about that? But I think it was interesting just seeing all these names coming out of Maryland now. Hopefully the football programs, going back up. I think they gave Ohio State a lot. They gave them hell last year. I remember that game. I watched that game. So hopefully Maryland's back as a football team, college football team it is. Basketball team, they're always there.
So I've been positive throughout this whole episode. So I'll tell you the Maryland guy I'm not as high on as everybody else. Jacorian Bennett.
Okay.
Jacorian Bennett. It's grab, hold, grab some more. And like I think that it's famous. You get away with that stuff at college a lot more than you do in the NFL. And everybody's talking about his combine was great. I think he ran a 4.3 flat or something ridiculous. And yeah, it is. But when I watch his Senior Bowl drills, I mean, he's drawing a flag on every play. Like to me, Sutton, it's one thing if you get grabby, but he's grabbing when he doesn't have to. He's in your hip pocket and he just still wants to grab. Like it seems like it's in here. Like it's going to be a long time to coach him out of it. So Jacorian Bennett, people love him. I understand. But like for me personally, I don't like to mess around like that with corners. One penalty costs you the game.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead. We're going to go ahead and end the draft talk with this one last question from 410 Byron. Says, what position should the Ravens double dip at this year?
You know what, Byron? I don't even think we got enough picks to double dip at this point. We only got 5.
That's kind of true. Yeah.
And it's a pretty balanced roster. Like we used to need receivers bad. I would say we definitely would have double dipped at receiver if not for Aguilar and Odell Beckham. Maybe we still do. Maybe we make a trade one draft day and a position opens up where we double dip. But I mean, you look at the starting roster. One of the reasons I'm excited about this season is it's a pretty darn good roster. Like we could use another corner. We got to do something at left guard. But I mean, other than that, it's not like all the other teams are perfect either. It's a good running game. Now all of a sudden the wide receivers and tight ends are formidable. Good line, good running back, good defense, greatest kicker of all time. Like I don't think we really have a dearth at any one position. That's just my opinion, though. What do you guys think?
I think I brought this up the other day. Oh boy, another cornerback. An old friend of ours is still a free agent. Didn't have the best year with the Raiders last year. Anthony Averett. We kind of have bad memories of him, but he wouldn't be on number one guys like he was at the end of his tenure when Marlon got hurt, when Marcus was hurt. I wouldn't hate him back on a cheap deal. And I know Rockeson, he's already visited us. And I know Adrian Amos, I believe he visited us too. Nothing came of that. But I would like us to get a defensive back before the draft. 1 year cheap deal.
Sutton, I actually have an answer for this now. I think if it might be cornerback, but I think one of the cornerbacks that you see might be labeled a safety. One of the changes that's happened in college football, especially the last few years, is these safeties now, Sutton, they're not like either your strong safety or a free safety. First of all, it's just hard to find a free safety. But these safeties are smaller and they're like slot corners. So like a guy like Brian Branch, who a lot of people like out of Alabama, he's labeled a safety, but he's a starting slot. So I could see them like, all right, this team this week's got a big receiver in the slot. Maybe we put Kyle Hamilton there this week since he did great. Brian Branch can play the traditional safety and cover the tight ends. Okay, maybe this week we're facing like a Deontay Johnson in the slot. Maybe Brian Branch covers him. Kyle Hamilton goes in Chuck Clark's spot. So maybe it's a cornerback and a safety, but they're both like the term safety is kind of like it's losing its true value, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. No. Definitely understand that for sure. Go ahead.
I know we have to talk getting rid of the draft talk real quick, but Dre asked if we decided to go wide receiver first, how would you feel about Eli Ricks? I was watching him this morning. Interesting story. Played for LSU, transferred to Bama. Kind of was a ball hawk at LSU. The picks didn't come to him at Bama. I thought he played a little physical. What would you think about him?
Yeah, I mean, he's tall. He's 6'2", 188. He's, like you're saying simply, he's got all that experience in the SEC. I think he'll equip himself really nice, and I think Draysky makes a good pick with a good point with all these top corners in the draft, like Banks and Christian Gonzalez and all those guys. That Rick's like in other drafts, you might be like an end of the first round guy. In this draft, I expect him to go in the second, and that's going to make some team really, really happy.
Gotta love the draft. Gotta love
it. Good stuff. All right, guys. So I think we're going to go ahead and leave it there for the draft talk. Again, thank you so much, Jason, for coming through. This episode 164 of the show, man. Again, please let them know where they can find you. Obviously, you are a bank of knowledge when it comes to this football stuff, this draft stuff. So let us know where we can find you.
Yeah, please check out my big board. And I'm going to be on with Ken McCusick, and it should be what's it called? Simply help me out. It's going to be on my channel too, whatever that's called. Simulcast. Okay. Be simulcast on my channel too on draft day, where we'll use my big board as like kind of a talking piece and that kind of thing. So I always have a good time with those guys. But up until then, I'm hoping to get some guests on in the next couple of weeks leading up to the draft to do more of this kind of talk. And but yeah, the big board is there for everybody. I got another copy saved in case somebody draws something on my big board, like happened a couple of years ago. It's kind of inappropriate. Simply, you wouldn't have liked what they draw. But yeah, they use my like I passed out at a party. That's what it looked like on my draft board. But yeah, just used it. Also, of course, highlights on my channel. So if you want to look at what Broderick Washington did last year and how he can replace Calais or any of the players. My highlights are different than Simply's. His is some high quality stuff. Mine's just basic coach's tape of play after play. But you can still, it's more informative, educational, so you can definitely get something out of it. But
yeah,
guys,
you highlight those linemen, I think, better than anyone else can, because highlighting offensive linemen is the one thing I think I can never do, because I don't know what's good play, what's bad play, what's a good rep, what's a bad rep. And I played a lineman as a freaking 8-year-old. All right, I don't know how, but they had me there. But yeah, I mean, I don't know why they put me there. I guess I don't know, but
what's Sutton play? Sutton's always like Mr. Workout over there. They probably had you return linebacker.
You're right. You're absolutely right. Linebacker. That's what I played. Didn't play too much of it, but yeah, that's what I played when I did play linebacker. So
yeah, I was a safety.
Speaking of playing, you're safety. Okay.
Yeah, man. Yeah, just reckless coming downhill. I also played wide receiver, but we never threw the damn ball. We ran the wishbone in the 90s, so wasn't no much fun. So I enjoyed my safety time much more.
Good stuff. Well, again, man, thank you. We thank you so much for coming on to the show.
Yeah.
Definitely looking forward to your content coming out in the future. Draft is right around the corner. So again, please head over to his YouTube channel, Huddle It Up Films. Lots of great stuff going on there. So again, Jason, we appreciate you, man, and we'll catch you next time. Okay.
Hey, love you guys. Thank you so much.
We love you.
Too,
Thank
brother.
You. Thank you.
All
right. Football is family.
Indeed.
All right. Good stuff. Great stuff.
Amazing
my guy
stuff.
Jason from Huddled Up Films. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean,
again, I'm gonna keep saying it. Make sure you guys go ahead and subscribe to his channel. Follow him on Twitter. Really good on Twitter. When you're talking about posting, I found out why Jalen Hyatt would be a good fit for the Ravens through his Twitter. So make sure you guys follow him, hit him up. Also, simply throw it in the chat. The big board. It's in a Google Doc. Make sure you click on that or copy the link, whatever, and take a look at who is really upcoming in this draft and who's going to be good for the Ravens. The best thing I like about his is that he has it color coded. So he has this, true first round grade guys, the predictive first rounders. He even has if they're going to be day 2, day 3, his favorites, and then there's a medical issue or a red flag. I mean, it's stuff like that. The draft is one of the most interesting nights because me and you may think this guy is first round, but there's a medical thing. He drops to second round or third, like we saw with JOK. Was it 2 years ago? He was supposed to be like a mid or early first rounder. Dude drops to the second round. We didn't know that. So that's the best thing about the draft. Cannot, recommend it as much. I mean, I feel like knowledge like that you should pay for because it's just so informative to football fans like us. I feel like we should be paying for it. That's how good it is. Yeah, I mean, because you in essence you enjoy the game more the more you understand it. So guys like him, definitely a gem in the community. So make sure you guys check him out. But thank you guys again for coming out to this episode 164 of the Purple Rain podcast. My name is Sutton Def. You can follow me on Twitter or Instagram at Sutton Def, just like you see down below. this guy over here, you can follow him on Twitter at simplyas10, on Instagram at simplyas10.prod. Our Instagram together is going to be at the Purple Rain Podcast. You can follow us there. Last but certainly not least, manscaped.com. You guys already know we led the episode with it. You can save 20% off your Manscaped order if you use our code PRP, and you also get free shipping too. And you can't beat that.
Kicker.
So make sure you cop up on that.
You know what's? I'm about to order stuff online today. I am not looking forward to those shipping prices. I'm not. You know, summer's coming around. You know, got to get some new shirts and some shorts and pants, and I don't want to see when it's going to hit me with that, what, $15 shipping? PRP, I mean, I'm sorry, Manscaped, when you use code PRP, says that shipping, don't worry about it. It's on us. We got it.
Yeah. And you notice, Alex, it's been real hot outside lately, right? So, you know, the weather's finally starting to break. I know a lot of us gentlemen, right? We might have been hibernating with our man beards over the winter. So it's time to cut that off, you know?
Not this.
It's time to go ahead and shave it off, start fresh for the summer, get that summer living going. So make sure you head over to manscaped.com. You can get the beard hedger. You can get the lawnmower 4.0, nose hair trimmers, whole bunch of stuff, man. Whole bunch of stuff. So make sure you guys head over there, cop up, use our code PRP.
Yeah, and I don't know about you guys, but I've actually, I watch YouTube videos before I sleep, and I always have asleep. There was a Manscaped ad right before I was watching a video. It was one, and like they're partnering with somebody as well. So I mean, doing great things. I think some of the benefits go there. But before we leave, Balti Raven, he came in and he said, "Oh, I'm gonna drop a quick 20 piece." Balti Raven, thank you very much. We appreciate you. I mean, just out of nowhere, thank you.
Making it rain, absolutely. Balti Raven, shout out to you, bro. Purple Rain Pioneer at his finest. We appreciate that, man. So yeah. With that being said, I'm gonna let my guy Alex take us out. Shout out to Balti Raven.
Shout out to Balti Raven. Shout out to Huddle Up Films for coming through. Thank you to everybody who watched. If you're a replay gang, gotta bring it up. Drop us down below. Talk about prospects you want to see. We'll be talking about prospects the next couple episodes till the draft. So it's that time. We can talk about a lot of things. But as always, stay positive, test negative, and one more thing.
And never, ever, ever forget to call God. This has been episode 164 of the Purple Rain Podcast. We're going to catch you guys in the next one. Peace.